All right. Apparently, this is going to end with the word foundation, the React Foundation being created. But let's start at the tippity top, which is this article right here. React, where are you going? My heart is breaking and only held together by what appears to be a paperclip that is very strange. What is this paper? Is this new paperclip to save metal in betwixt the two lines here? Or is this just AI generated nonsense? Is this just what AI generation is now looks like? I don't even know. I'm writing these random notes as an open letter to the people I deeply trust in React. And more generally, the open source community people like Tanner Lindsley, Lori Voss, Cassidy Williams, Michael Jackson. Feels bad. Always. I see Michael Jackson around. He's a very nice guy. But, just having, who would have guessed that you got a name that ended up being an incredibly famous name and then being an incredibly famous name for bad reasons, right? You know what I mean? Sucks. It sucks to have that. Mark Erickson, Kyle Matthews, Sophie Alpert, and many others. In the past few months, I've been feeling conflicted about React. It started with the days when server components were essentially announced at a framework conference, and the React documentation began suggesting the use of external framework for React development. After reading Cassidy's post last night and sharing her vision, I think Cassidy also had some sort of I also am not very happy with React. I think React is incredibly impressive. I'll say that out loud. What they've built, what they've been able to garner, the community they've been able to build, the longevity of their framework that hasn't changed names frequently. Very impressive. And remember, this isn't just me, someone who is much more critical of React, saying these things. These are people who love React, right? I can compliment React every now and then, okay? There's plenty of really great things that React has done, okay? The thing is that before React came about, we were starting to move all this logic to the client to begin with. And we just did it in a very everyone's own wild way in some sort of sense. And I think it's good to recognize the fact that React just accelerated something that was already there, and they did it in a slightly nicer way. Maybe. And when it first started off, it was so simple, right? It was a very, very simple thing. It was fun. It was fun. I really liked React when it first came out. I didn't know. I was so used to jQuery that I thought it was like a great experience. Then over the years, I just learned to kind of hate it because I really hated the state management of the whole situation. I really hated how big and fast apps grew because I felt like I was making a lot of code for something small. And it just kept getting bigger, and it just felt like it kind of flew out of control. And so that's why I've been such a big lover of HTMX, and I'll probably continue to love HTMX ad infinitum because it allows me to simplify this process. And where needed, I can inject something like React if I want to. I can inject web components, Solid.js, Svelte, whatever I want to do. But I can kind of reunify this process in a more simplified way. And that's what I just really like about it. You know what I mean? Why do people say HTMX is insecure? Because they are insecure themselves, okay? Any framework is insecure. It's up to you to make sure that you handle things properly. HTMX just puts the onus always on you, whereas React hides some of your oopsie-daisy insecurity, which I'm not saying is great. All right, anyways. All right, I fell in love with React in 2016 when Angular announced Angular 2, and we were worried about breaking changes. I immediately fell in love with the React community, even though I had never actively participated. I remember tweets between Sophie Alpert and Dan Abramov. I also remember the first talk at React.js Day, Italy, by Michele Bortoli in 2016, which made my eyes sparkle. And I can't forget in 2018 the edition of React.js Day when Michael Jackson recreated much of the React router live coding in front of us. Those were great days. Live coding at conferences are a rarity. It's very hard to do. I've done it once. Awesome job, by the way. Awesome job. It's a rarity to see it because it's really hard to do anything to begin with. React has been a winning choice for us, both as web development agency and now as a product company. I still get emotional when I think about the day, I believe January 2nd, 2020, when I showed the first MVP of React Bricks to Guillermo Orange, who was the first to believe in the project and gave me the confidence to go on. Good guy, Guillermo. Triangle company leader, the tip of the triangle. However, today I see two problems that make me enjoy React a little less and make me worry that new developers might be intimidated by it: ownership and complexity. Complexity, for sure. It is pretty wild to think that for you to use a front-end framework, the kind of going mantra right now is that you need to have your project set up a certain way to be able to retrieve data. You have to have your backend set up a certain way to look like this. You have to use this specific technology. You have to be able to be tied back and forth. You have to know the difference between use client and use server. You have to have this one meaningful application spread across two machines. And typically that's a very hard thing to achieve. And I think Dan had some good talks about it, about why he thinks it's the right way to go. And maybe he is correct. But for me, it just feels difficult. It feels like I'm not sure if I believe about that. Prime, tell us about your 6 node dependencies. Well, technically it's 5 node dependencies. The 6th one I just need to bring in because I want to bring in some debug logging for me later down the road for when someone has a problem and I can let myself know. As for ownership, I don't particularly like that. React suggests using a framework to start a project, suggesting to use one of these 3 main open source frameworks instead of just React. I mean, but is React the victim here? Can we all be real for a second? Is React the victim or is React the perpetrator? I would argue that React is more of the victim than anything else, because JavaScript is just a wild, wild, wild ecosystem. It just is. And so for you to, like, I want to use React. Okay, you want to use React. Well, how are you going to compile the JSX? How are you going to get that into the web browser? How are you going to serve it? A self-made victim, sure. But nonetheless, like, just answer all those questions, right? The ecosystem, by the dint of what it is today, is extremely hard to just use. And by the way, nobody is going to use React like React.create element. Nobody's going to go through and use it that way. They're all going to use JSX, okay? This idea that people are like, well, you don't have to use React with JSX. It's like, you're right. You don't have to. I could also write a C-based API and make my own beautiful event loop and everything and embed Lua to create my own server. But that would probably be stupid of me to do. You know, it would be a lot nicer not to do that, to use somebody else's. But why not Rust? During a frameworks conference, new React features such as React server components are introduced to a large part of the community for the first time, as if it was just a framework achievement. The most popular framework, which has hired some people from the React core team, which is not a bad thing, but certainly provides them with privileged insight into development, uses Canary releases, while the last release of React 18.2 as of June 22 is this way. In this way, Canary features enter the codebase of many new React projects, becoming the de facto stable release, but just for the users of a framework that can feel safe leveraging Canary features. It is interesting. I mean, this is a very good argument, I think. I think the undergirding argument that is probably being made here is that whether you like it or not, there's perverse incentives to build something that aligns with the framework as opposed to aligning with React and the community, is how I read this. And since they have access to all of this, they can build in such a way that it makes it really strong, you know, a strong relationship between, say, Next and React, where some of the community doesn't want that, and they feel kind of left behind, if you will. That's how I read it. Furthermore, features like server actions, which trigger metered serverless function calls when hosted on cloud platforms, may potentially increase hosting costs for front-end applications in the future. While this is not currently a problem since there is no monopoly and we have the freedom to choose, I would like a way for the community to be guaranteed that tomorrow there will be still multiple choices available. There will always probably be multiple choices available, and you cannot guarantee such a future. But the reality is that the danger that I think you really should be thinking about is that when you are fully sold on one platform, no matter what the platform is, okay, because I'm not stupid enough to say that that somehow, like, every platform suffers from this, which is that whoever's owning it has the ability to turn a knob of profit. And that knob of profit means more cost to you. Now, this works for everything, right? This works for everything. If you're just raw dogging EC2 instances, Amazon still has the knob of making more profit. If you're doing your own on-prem stuff, you have to hire people. Effectively, you're taking on all the cost, and you're going to have to do all your regional stuff, and that'd be just impossibly expensive. So then you do on-prem services for various places. But again, the hosting of on-prem stuff with somebody else doing it still has the knob of profit, where in case they need to increase rent, right? It's impossible to escape vendor lock. It's impossible to escape vendor lock. It just simply is. It's just it's just a matter of how are you locked. It's not so like this is the problem with just going say all serverless and all edge and all everything is that you are beholden to many vendors. I'm not saying it's better or worse. I like real talk. I love Terso. It's an edge-based database. It is a vendor lock-in. Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. It's cheap for 99.99% of apps. It's way cheaper than ever trying to manage your own database yourself. Oh yeah, that's a hashtag ad. This is effectively a hashtag ad. By the way, Terso terso.tech/D's nuts. If you want 10% off, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, but either way, you're still locked in to using them. Ain't no fucking way. Yes, they gave me that short code. Okay, D's nuts. Okay, that's really why I love the ad so dang much is I get to say that. How great is that? But this, I mean, it's real. And so anyone that tries to tell you that somehow this other way is actually much, much better and that you're all being vendor locked, they're full of shit. Okay? I'm vendor locked to Linux. I'm vendor locked to the database I choose. You think you're just going to hot swap out a database? Furthermore, features like server actions, which trigger meterless serverless function calls when hosted on cloud platforms, may potentially increase hosting costs for front-end applications in the future. You're a monster, I know. I hope that he has to use jQuery. And that's it. That's the only library he gets to use in JavaScript. While this is not currently a problem since there is no monopoly and we have the freedom to choose, you can never get guaranteed. Please understand that I don't see anyone as being evil in this regard. Great things can come out of the collaboration between private company and the community. It's simply a matter of separating concerns and responsibilities. Wait, jQuery, you want him to make money? I hope he has to program Haskell from here on out. White papers only. Complexity. I started creating websites in 1996 when I was 17 years old, and at that time you created an HTML files and uploaded them to an FTP server to a folder served by a web server. I managed my own physical server, a Pentium 120, housing it at a local internet provider. I ran Windows NT for IIS. Oh, gosh! The poor man, as web server, bind for DNS, and IP switch iMail server for email. Everything was simple and clear. Nowadays, web development has become powerful, but much more complex. This is actually a really great. I mean, I'm not saying that this day was better, but it was most certainly simpler. Is that true? It's hard to say. What is simple in this case? Is modern web development simple? Actually, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe it's easy to get started, but it's actually complex. Maybe it's like the great lie. The great lie is when something is easy and complex because it feels easy. So it's easy to start, extremely hard to move on. Like I can't tell you how many projects I see that die under feature changes. It's crazy how many projects I watch just witness grind to a halt over adding like a fucking button. It's wild. Nowadays, web development has become much more powerful, but also much more complex. We have lost touch with what is happening under the hood, with the introduction of transpilers, bundlers, and frameworks. However, React stands out with its clean, one-way data flow. I mean, that's not technically true, right? Whenever you perform an action that requests and hits the server, your data has gone this way. It's like a circle. Yes, you could argue that what he's saying is that there's a circle that exists. But it's hard to believe that because the problem is that it's not a circle because often you need more sophisticated data management. And then you end up bringing in a global event bus called Redux or something like that, where now you have like components emitting non-saved events that go into Redux that come down and then affect other components. And it's no longer one way. Right? I think it's only one way in sample applications. I don't think it's one way in real applications. Real big-ass applications have data flowing all over the place, going all over because you give somebody an event bus and I will give you events, right? Things got a bit more complicated with hooks. Hooks, I love the idea of hooks. I always look at them as like orthogonal properties, but imagine saying all this, but with blue hair. It will happen. Which, then I'll talk about Rust and the foundation, how great it is. So, which some have behind-the-scenes black magic, but it was manageable and in the end, a good choice. I'm not sure if it was a good choice yet. I'm still not convinced it was a good choice. By the way, you forgot a closing parenthesis. Classic oopsie daisy when you do a smiley face. You forget the closing parenthesis. Classic. With server components, everything is much more complex to grasp, and the fact that they are the default choice in the most widely used React framework somewhat forces newcomers also to learn this new paradigm. I understand the advantages of RSE, but now we have two different ways of building this even within the same React framework. I will still argue that I think within 2 years, we will see a lot of don't use X considered harmful talks about various features of React server components. I think it's absolutely going to happen. We just have to wait it out. I think there's a lot of dangers and there's a lot of cool stuff at the exact same time, being able to interweave server and client components, meaning that you can pass in to a client component a server rendered component. That is really cool. That is a good, positive thing, but it is also a very complex thing. You know what I mean? It is a very complex thing. Could be good, could be bad. I'm just saying it's a nightmare to debug. I think it is. It's complecting. It's true. It's actually the truest form of complecting. It's complecting these two. It's your server and your client are complecting together. They're complecting your app. Dude, I love that term, complecting. It's so good. We have recently completed a task of making React Bricks library compatible with RSE. This required a month of work and thousands of lines of code. I wonder what React Bricks is. What does React Bricks do? Because thousands of lines of code seems like a lot of code. It's a CMS. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, it's just a CMS, but you build it with React. I always am very curious about that. Why would you want a React CMS? I'm curious what's the point of React and not just making it like this is like a low code, no code CMS. I guess the benefit is that the low code portion is that when you do code, you code with React. Is that what it is? Is that the kind of the selling point of it? I assume that's the selling point, which I get. I get. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying I totally get the idea. Why not WordPress? I mean, I'm always curious why not just use WordPress. Honestly, I know how much they're shitty and all that stuff, but it's easy. I don't know, like Builder.io, right? I don't know. This required a month of work and thousands of lines of code. However, as a result, the final API for developers is not as clean as before. I am uncertain whether sacrificing simplicity for slight performance boost will truly benefit our customers. Nevertheless, since it is both the default and the new shiny thing, we have to have it. Like real talk, I don't know if you do. Meanwhile, there are many interesting things happening outside the React world with new frameworks. Astro kind of has its own version of all of this. You know what I mean? Astro kind of has a lot of the stuff. Chat, do you complecting? I wouldn't like to be a new programmer trying to choose their framework right now, as the decision is really tough. React is the most popular. Vue is easier to use. Svelte is a cool idea. Astro is really great. And then there are signals with Solid.js by very smart and humble Ryan Carniato. By the way, Ryan is actually both. This guy nailed Ryan Carniato on the head here. He's actually a really nice, humble dude. Very, very, very kind. Quick is also very smart. I love the approach. Didn't get hit with the humble, though. I'm just saying, Quick. Mishko, you didn't get hit with the humble. It was created by the competitors of React Bricks, but I hold them in the highest esteem. So the choice of a base framework is already so complicated. I know, but again, look at the perspective being had here. The perspective is that the world can only be built with these complicated front-end libraries. Oh, forgot another bracket? Oh yeah, did forget another bracket. It's very easy to do this. It's very easy to forget a bracket. A dream. This complex scenario, it would be beneficial to have a default official React framework that covers the basic needs of building an SEO-friendly website with routing, SSG, SSR, ISR, and all the permutations of these letters. Forgot. Dude, it's very easy. Like I said, it's extremely easy. I love that he uses smiley faces, though. Huge fan of not using emoticons, but actually using just ASCII-based smileys. I know that the Remix team would not agree on the need for SSG, but I think it's a valid use cases, and I would like to be always. Let's see, I would like it to always be self-hostable on a Linux box. Yeah, OG. By the way, I used the term emoticon, not emoji. Okay. The default framework should not aim to include all the shiny new things out there. I mean, the hard part is once those shiny new things are the default, it's hard. How do you not, right? It's hard. How do you not? Emoticons? Oh, yeah, emoticons are great. Forget brackets again. I know. It's so easy not to. It's so easy not to. Can't blame the guy. Found in other frameworks like Remix or Next.js, which I use and love. I believe it should serve as a solid starting point created by the community, and I think we have already some great stuff available today. To start with Tanner. Tanner's great. Tanner Lindsley makes some great stuff. As for RSC, I think the concept of avoiding hydration is great, but we need a new kind of server-client integration to make them easy to use. Again, I really would love these people just to like spend a month making something with HTMX. And when they really, 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 really need it, they try like a web component or maybe then trying to bring in React. I skipped a paragraph. It happens. Okay, I did. All right, hold on. I envisioned this default framework being developed by the React community with a steering committee consisting of recognized contributors from the React ecosystem through voting process. Foundation. And I know that it's usually open source doesn't work in this way, but I dream of this Prob Viri Fellowship of the Ring. Probi Viri? I don't know this term. Fellowship of the Ring. Making decisions. May the fortune be with you on that one. Sounds very great. But we need a new kind of server-client integration to make them easy to use. If they remain complex with the current constraints, trading simplicity for performance would not be beneficial for most websites, and probably RSC is losing in terms of performance compared to something like Quick anyways, because they are performing the same work twice, processing chunks from serialized JSON on the client. However, this material for separate discussion. Again, I really would love to see just something else, right? Like, maybe the world doesn't have to be this way at all. It's one of the classic computer science conundrums happening right now, which is that you have some place in which you're trying to optimize, right? And you've landed right here. And when you go this direction, it sucks. When you go this direction, it sucks. So you just try to keep going down right here. And the problem is that maybe, just maybe, this has never been the optimized place. This is just a local minima. And the real optimization is somewhere else completely. You've just simply found the lowest local minima, and you're kind of swimming back and forth in this, trying to figure out where exactly is it, right? And it's more like NP complete, which, by the way, NP complete is this in this, right? So if you were to zoom into this, it looks like that, right? It's just like impossible to say that you're anywhere near. And so I think that's one of the big problems of front-end world right now is that we are in a place in which we're not investigating drastically different solutions. We're only investigating solutions that are based off of current solutions. I think HTMX is one great way. I think Phoenix Live View, Laravel Live View, all these things are really great, right? Like there are other things out there that are just vastly different ways in which you can create things. You could do, you technically could use Leptos and front end stuff. I don't love WebAssembly, so I'm just not buying that as an environment yet. I think it's really a big pain in the ass to debug, but there are just like completely different answers out there that just don't even exist. Or Java applets, yeah. Laravel? Yeah, Laravel. Yeah. WASM is such a pain in the ass. Exactly. That's my big problem. Like, I love Leptos. I think it's a great, great framework. It's just that the WebAssembly side of it is so hard. What are your thoughts on the future of React? Do you believe it's feasible to have a community-driven framework without a sponsoring company? No, I don't. I think the thing is that you should shoot for companies to sponsor it. Many companies. Like, that's the real thing, is that many companies have to get together and try to build off this thing. Second, I think you need a benevolent dictator. I think you need one person that makes it, or else you have this whole committee problem. I mean, you have like the whole Node.js problem right now. Node.js is getting blown out of the water by Bun in performance because Bun is able just to make decisions and people just run the way they want to run it. And there's just one person that's running it, the benevolent dictator that says this is how we're going to do things, and that's how it works. Whereas for Node to actually go, okay, now we need to talk about it. Let's get our technical steering committee. We now need to go do these things. We now need, like, it's hard. And plus, Node is off of the backs of free labor, whereas Bun is VC funded. So, again, is it better to have funding and companies? Node does have a great URL parser, though. Absolutely. But with this sort of elected steering committee, how could this independent steering committee be financially supported by the community or corporate users? The problem is corporate users means companies. Once you start getting funded, you start getting influence, then you have backdoor influence, right? And nobody wants backdoor weighing back again, okay? Because the problem is that the guy that gives $100,000, guess who has the ear of people making decisions? The guy giving $100,000, right? I mean, do you want politics all over again? I would rather take the Bun approach than the Rust Foundation approach. Just saying. You know what I mean? Yeah, you keep linking this Remix Run business. Data is so fast you'll puke. Instant transition with prefetch loaders. Dodge the network with client caches. Instant search with IndexedDB data replications. Oh yeah, I saw something about this. It's really long. It's pretty cool. Like I love all these things. These things are all super cool, and I think the example was super cool. Go check it out. Like obviously he's very, very talented. What he makes and all that. I don't want to say nothing negative here about it. It's just that. Again, I'm not convinced what I don't know what the complexity looks like as it scales. How hard does it get? What happens if you have a bunch of weird cases? What does it look like? Also, you have a whole client and server data problem that goes on here that can be very hard to resolve, and there's a lot of weird things that happen. And maybe this is fantastic. Maybe this is the perfect way to build apps. Maybe this is the best that can be done. I don't know. You ported one of his examples to HMX. Nice. Again, I just don't know. Or maybe Phoenix and LiveView, right? Maybe that's the best way. Hey, I like to see things done, okay? I like to see things done, and I'm not going to dunk on this because I think it's probably really great. I think this is probably different than how it was, and maybe it does feel faster, and maybe it does feel great. Oh, I forgot to look at this, by the way. After all of this, Sophie does talk about it, and at the end, they are talking about potentially making a foundations, which, by the way, I'd just be super, I just completely doubt that this could ever actually work out. I think Next.js is probably the better way to do it, is that you have a framework that has a lot of money behind it and a lot of people working, and they're going to give a best-in-class support for it. I just don't see how this really moves forward without that. Oh, big news. I'll do something on this. I think it's probably a good thing to. I'll do something on this because I think it'd be a really good a good thing for me to talk about. But we won't do it here. Let's see. To be honest, I don't think we have the best way figured out yet. But I 100% believe that tech like LiveView, HTMX, etc. are the correct direction. Yeah, I mean that's why I even think React server components are in the vein of correct direction. I'm not saying they're the best, but I just think that they're at least going the right way, which is, wait a second, like big client apps maybe weren't the way to begin with. And I think that is definitely correct. Vein. All right, the name, I got to be done, is the Veinogen. Feeling veiny, people.